Mount up! We're coming!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and we're going to start off the show tonight with my conversation with Josh Weinfuss, who covers the Arizona Cardinals for ESPN, and we're going to go through all of the Kyler Murray narratives, what is truth and what is fiction, that in just a second. And then later on tonight, Manny Hill will stop by to give his reaction, not only to the Kyler Murray signing, but to the lack of other signings as free agents have continued to come off the board. In terms of the interview coming up here, Josh was in a little bit of a noisy room, so we tried to do the best to clean up the audio. Apologies for a little bit of that. The connection was not flawless, but you can definitely hear Josh's breakdown of Kyler Murray. So let's just jump right into that conversation, myself and ESPN's Josh Weinfuss. All right, we welcome into the show from ESPN, covers the Arizona Cardinals, Josh Weinfuss, who has covered the entirety of Kyler Murray's career, every up and down that has gone with Kyler Murray, and I've been hitting that retweet button every time you share one of the old articles to let Vikings fans know what they are getting. But I want to talk with you, Josh, about some of the things that get said about Kyler Murray. And there's a phrase that we have here that Stephon Diggs once said, truth to all rumors was what he said about, potentially wanting a trade once. So I'm curious how much truth there is to all rumors about Kyler Murray. Maybe we could start out, Josh, with just you explaining why Kyler Murray is a Minnesota Viking and not an Arizona Cardinal.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question when you kind of look at where the Cardinals are right now. I think it was a situation where it was time for change, right? It was time for both sides to move on. Arizona fired Jonathan Gannon after last season. Gannon was a big proponent of Kyler's. They got Mike LaFleur. We have no idea if Mike LaFleur was a Kyler believer or not. He said kind of all the right things, but obviously by them getting rid of him, that kind of showed that he wasn't. But at the same time, might not have been his decision either, right? This could have been something that came from above. I've heard a lot of rumblings that the Cardinals owner, Michael Bidwell, is a big fan of Kyler's, but yet that still didn't stop him from getting rid of him after he paid him, was it $36.8 million, of which he will now have to pay $35.5 million of, because the Vikings signed Kyler to a 1-year league minimum $1.3 million contract. So it just seemed like it was time, right? Like things have not gone smoothly here. It's been a roller coaster. It's a love fest all over for Kyler, but things were not. It was not gravy, right? It was more like Rocky Road instead of straight vanilla, and it was just time for both sides to find a new place. And I think that Kyler could he could flourish in the right system, in the right place, in the right organization, in the right building, with the right people around him. And I think that's a distinct possibility this year with the Vikings.
Josh, my assumption has been that what they were going to do there is do a complete franchise rebuild, which wouldn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense if you were doing a rebuild with a quarterback that could win you 7 games, right? And it's kind of, even in 2024, I think that the team was decent and they played against the Vikings, and that was a very good and close game. But last year, it just became clear how many holes they had after spending in free agency and trying to patchwork together. And it seemed like they decided they just have to live in reality here, that his timeline with his contract did not add up with the roster build. What adds up better is Jacoby Brissett versus Gardner Minshew, and then see if you end up with Arch Manning or whatever other quarterback might emerge. That kind of makes sense to me. But I want to go back to something that you said about Jonathan Gannon, because I had heard here just in asking around about Murray that Gannon liked Kyler Murray and that Drew Petzing got along with him actually very well. which goes kind of against some of the way that he was thought about with Cliff Kingsbury and his coachability and, how much, those two were on the same page. Can you kind of explain the compare and contrast between Cliff Kingsbury era Kyler Murray and Drew Petzing / Jonathan Gannon era Kyler Murray?
How much time do we have? Because this is not a succinct conversation. So, there's so much to unpack here. Um, I'll say this about the last regime. Kyler Murray and Jonathan Gannon, like you said, like you heard correctly, they got along very well. They lived near each other. Kyler had gone to Jonathan's house for the Super Bowl a couple of years, like watched, he'd go hang out. They'd call each other on the way home from games and kind of debrief what had just happened. Like they were very close. That's a stark difference from how Kyler's time with Cliff Kingsbury ended. I mean, those two hardly talked, if at all, the last year and a half of Kingsbury's time in Arizona. Kingsbury was was the offensive coordinator. They had a quarterbacks coach, but by the end, like Cliff stopped going to quarterback meetings because of his relationship with Kyler. Like it was not good. Um, and I think there's you can blame both sides, right? Like I think everyone who wants to pin it on one or the other, it's not fair, it's not accurate. I think the situation was Cliff, and he had been a college head coach, and I think he's an incredible offensive mind. I think he's creative. I think he knows what he's doing offensively. I just don't know if the head coach aspect of I don't think he had the personality to be a head coach. And I think what it came down to, what I had heard multiple times, is that Kyler Murray loves to be coached. He loves to be yelled at. Like his high school coach MF'd him. His college coach MF'd him. Cliff never did it, right? And which is weird because NFL coaches love to MF players, right? They love to get on their backs. And Cliff handled him with kid gloves. He put on the white gloves and just everything was very soft. And Kyler wanted to be coached. And I think having that type of situation as Kyler's entry to the NFL, I think that was kind of the root of some of the issues that Kyler dealt with. They didn't have a true veteran presence behind him. I think that they needed to have a veteran quarterback who can be like, hey, listen to what I'm saying. Let me show you how to do these things. Like Kyler came in, number one pick, Heisman Trophy winner. I think he lost 4 games in college, 5 games, something like that, after going undefeated for 3 years in high school. Like there was, he had his own. He knew where he was. He thought, this is where I am. And I think he needed the right situation in the NFL. And I don't think the Cardinals put him in the right situation. I think looking back on it, right? Like hindsight's obviously 2020, but if Cliff was his OC and they had kind of an old school coach who can get on him and they could play the good cop, bad cop, I think it would have been totally different. I think we would have seen a totally different side of Kyler Murray. That wasn't the case. Obviously, it peaked Thursday Night Football in 2022 before he got hurt. He basically yelled at Cliff on the sidelines. Like, you never see that. And I think this kind of showed everyone this is what their relationship is right now. And Cliff, he did the right thing and he took it on the sideline and he dealt it afterwards. But that was emblematic of their entire time. Fire Cliff, Tyler's hurt, in comes Jonathan Gannon. He has his own quirks, right? He's very eccentric. He's very just upbeat all the time. But him and Kyler hit it off. I think Kyler wanted a fresh start. I think that injury humbled him. It changed him. He was a totally different person in my eyes after the injury in 2022. And then he was running an offense that wasn't a college-based offense. Like, I'm sure this will be talked about forever and a day, but like the whole study clause that was put in his contract in 2022. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but like he was studying an offense that he hadn't run since he was in the 8th grade. Sure, there were wrinkles and tweaks here and there to make it NFL proper, but like he knew that inside and out. And then it comes through Petzing's pro style scheme, and he actually sat down and he learned it. And they changed his footwork, they changed his drop back. He went under center more, like he became more of a pro style quarterback, and he embraced that. He loved it. Like he's a football junkie. Like he really doesn't do much else besides, at least during the season. Like sure, he plays video games. We all know that, but that's kind of his way of decompressing. Just like every player has a way of decompressing. But he really loved learning a new system and getting into that and kind of watching it from the sideline. From the sideline, as he recovered, and then when he got into it, like he played really well in it at times. So it's that's kind of everything in a nutshell, right? Like he really got along with Kingsbury. With I'm sorry, did not get along with Kingsbury. Got along with Gannon. Got along with Petzing. They have their conversations. And I was told they never had heated arguments. They never yelled at each other, but they'd have debates. They'd go back and forth because that's what coaches and quarterbacks do, right? Like Drew would want to do one thing. Kyle's like, why don't we do this? Well, here's why I want to do this. Here's why I think you should do this. Kyler would say what he thinks. Like that give and take is what makes NFL relationships work, and they did that, and it worked well. And Drew Petzing is a very bright coach. He knows what he's doing, and Kyler recognized that. He recognized the intellect in the room, and he was able to bring his own football IQ. And they had really productive conversations. And I think 2025 was it was interesting, right? And here's why: because they had wanted Kyler to check down a lot in 2025, and that was kind of he worked on that, kind of going through his progressions. Didn't always work, and things just did not. Things were not as smooth in those first 5 games as they should have been. And here's the thing: like the Cardinals were an Amari DiMarcardo fumble out of the end zone against the Titans away from beating them. There are a couple other plays like they could have been 4-1, 5-0, and all of a sudden Kyler's still the quarterback this year because they're making a run for the playoffs last year, and it just showed you like it's not all out of his control. Like everyone's like, oh, they were one play away from losing the first couple of weeks against the Saints and the Panthers. But where was the defense? And nobody wanted to blame the defense. Everyone wanted to blame Kyler, which is par for the course, right? Like you're an NFL quarterback, you're going to get the blame, but it wasn't all his fault. So um, back to your initial question. Yes, he got along very well with Gannon and Petzing. Obviously, the relationship soured with Kingsbury. But I think the one thing that was telling was his goodbye post to Gannon. Like that said everything people needed to know. And I think that kind of I don't want to say shut people up. I think that kind of caught some people by surprise.
So when it comes to the narrative about him and the work ethic and all that, I mean, I'm sure you've heard every single joke. I was doing a, radio hit myself, and the first thing is, hey, it's 1.3 million in a PlayStation, am I right? And it's like, all right, well, first of all, the other night, Jamar Chase was live streaming and reacting to something in free agency. No one ever says anything about that. Justin Jefferson plays video games. I think actually Kyler was just ahead of his time a little bit. Like he was live streaming before other people were. And before, athletes have always played video games, but before they were kind of putting it out there and where, you could go play someone Call of Duty who plays in the NFL, which our technology allows now. But I know this, and you wrote a great story about Kyler Murray in chess, because I'm a huge chess fan. I've seen him play in Blitz Champs. Shockingly, athletes can do other things outside of just playing football, but it is something that has really stuck to him. And this is why I wanted to ask you about it, because when Sam Darnold got here, what do you think everyone said to me? He sees ghosts. And you're like, okay, well, that was when he was 21 playing Belichick's defense, and it wasn't even supposed to be aired anyway. It always frustrates me when these things kind of stick to guys and never go away. But is there some element of truth to that, or do you think that was just kind of a narrative that ended up getting out there and not going away?
I have two parts of an answer to this. So the first is, I have someone close to him once tell me, would you rather him be the player that goes to the nightclub or goes to a strip club or goes out all the time and is in the news, gets arrested? Like that's how they decompress. Or would you rather him go home, throw on the video game, play a little bit, watch some TV? Like he's not getting in trouble. So like if he were to get in trouble, what would people say? Like, oh, you should have been home playing video games. Why is he playing video games? Or why is he playing video games? Like the problem with the public is no one's ever happy. And fans are fans, right? Like they're never pleased because it fits whatever narrative. They find whatever fits their narrative, right? So that's one aspect to this. The second aspect is someone explained this to me recently. Like the offense he was running under Kingsbury was like the equivalent of him studying addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, basic stuff. Stuff like I explained. He started running this offense in 8th grade. His 8th grade coach from the Kingsbury's camp at Texas Tech learned the system, brought it back, and that's what he ran in high school, in college. That's what he ran at I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he ran at A&M, but that's what he ran at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. Like, kid knows the air raid inside and out. So he would spend hours studying at the facility and then not study at home. And the Cardinals saw that. But like, is that a bad thing? If you get all your work done, do you need to take it home with you? And I know there's this whole thing like, oh, you NFL players should always be doing more, but at some point, I think everyone's different, right? I think everyone's study habits are very different, and how they learn is very different. Like, I think he was the type of person where he just needed to step away, right? He did his work. All right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to let it process. I'm going to let it marinate. I'm going to go to bed, get up early, do the whole thing in the morning. Like, this is who he was. And people just couldn't, people didn't like him for a lot of reasons that didn't make sense. I think that just, when Drew Petzing gets to Arizona, he studied hard. He had to study hard. It was something he had never done. He had never done before. It wasn't math. It wasn't addition. It wasn't subtraction. It wasn't multiplication. It was, I'm sorry, addition. It was math, but like it was like pre-calc. It was algebra. It was like it was all these advanced techniques and all this advanced level football that he had to go and study for. So this whole work ethic thing, it's ridiculous. I'll never forget after it came out that it was happening 4 days later, or after it came out that this contract had the independent study clause. Like 4 days later, they took it out, and he shows up to a he has an impromptu press conference during training camp 2022, and he's like, guys, and this has always stuck with me. He's like, do you think I could play quarterback in the NFL without studying? He's like, honestly, do you think so? And everyone's like, no. He's like, no kidding. He's like, obviously I study. Everyone studies. He's like, my habits might be different than others, but I study. And like, people just didn't accept that. And I'm like, do you really think he's going to go out there and not have a clue what the end's going to do, or the safety? Like when the guy comes up, takes 2 steps into the box, you don't think Kyler knows what's going to happen? Like, it's ridiculous. It was utterly ridiculous. And I think the other thing about his work ethic, I'll tell you this: like, I've watched a kid every day for 7 years. After he got hurt, he was out there training with the Cardinals strength and conditioning guy coordinator, Buddy Morse, every day. He did his post practice work. He did his pre practice work. Like, he was in the weight room. Like, he put in the work to get back on the field. And people who say even when he's back, he still did his work. Like, we walked by him on Fridays and he was doing his work outside in front of us. Like, the work ethic thing is just, it's mind blowing, but it's just people who aren't there, who don't see him, make these assumptions, they create these narratives, and they run with it. And like, I'm not gonna sit and be like, oh, I'm there, you're not. But like, literally, I watch it happen. And I'm not trying to defend the kid. I'm trying to explain what I see. And what I see is someone who does things that are against what everyone else is saying.
No, I mean, it's literally true that you are there and other people are
Yeah.
not. And one of the things that I've said probably 20 times over the last month is that no one has watched the Arizona Cardinals play football in a long time. And I feel bad for you because you do great work covering the Cardinals. I've enjoyed covering you for a long time, but you might be getting more clicks out of covering the Phoenix Mercury than you are out of the Arizona Cardinals sometimes. It's just been unfortunate for you, Josh. And especially that 2024 season. The odd thing to me when Vikings fans talk about like, oh, well, he runs the college offense, or you got to dumb it down, or all he does is scramble, is like he played against your team and he did a good job against your team. Do you remember the football game? And so I've gone back and watched now the all 22 for the first 5 games of last year and all of 2024. And the observation that I've had is that under center really stuck out to me because that was something I didn't think that he did. And you see him running traditional bootleg rollouts that John Elway was running for Mike Shanahan in 1997, but he's doing some of that. And there's a lot of motions. There's a lot of pre-snap stuff that's going on. And it looks to me like there's more similarities to a Kevin O'Connell offense than people would expect. It looks like a lot of Shanahan type stuff that he runs with Brock Purdy, which doesn't surprise me because Petzing was under Kevin Stefanski and Gary Kubiak in Minnesota. Can you talk about that fit though? Because I have some observations of my own about Kyler sometimes bailing while there's a receiver there and deciding to like, now I'm just going to run and take what's there. The check down thing actually makes sense because watching back 2025, it was like, okay, the ball is definitely out of his hands really fast. in some of these games where things could progress. Maybe the offensive line had something to do with that, but explain your view on that fit between that style of offense that was sort of Shanahan inspired down the line and Kyler Murray.
I'll be here's a disclaimer. I don't really I hardly watch the Vikings offense. Like I don't want to get into I don't know it enough to talk about it in detail. I will say this. Kyler, you know, he can do a lot. He can do everything, right? Like you want him to run the West Coast, you want him to run the air raid. He can do it. He could go in the shotgun. He can go under center. Like, but here's something interesting. And I don't know how this is gonna work in Kevin O'Connell's building and his system. Player told me last year that Kyler every week knows that he's either the best athlete on the field or the second best athlete on the field. And he said more often than not, he will go through his first progression, maybe get to a second progression. And if it's not there, he's out. He's gone. I don't know how Kevin O'Connell is going to react to that. I don't know. But also, I don't know if Kyler is going to be doing that in that system, right? And then with that offensive line. So I think that's something to watch. Like Kyler, his game needs to include running. And if you don't take advantage of his legs, you're wasting an aspect of his game that's extremely dangerous, that can create a lot of fun things. We've seen it. The one thing I never understood, and with Petzing and Kingsbury, is why Tyler doesn't get out and run within the first 5-6 plays of the game. Make a defense be like, okay, this is going to happen today. Then you put them on their heels, and it opens up everything, right? Like even if it's a 5-yard boot and just let him go, or up to whatever it is, like get him out in space, let him do his thing early on to get everyone to think. So to go into like the West Coast scheme, like he can run it. Here's the thing, he has the arm. Like everyone's like, oh, his arm doesn't work anymore. I'm like, why does his arm not work anymore? If anything, the first thing that's going to go on a player like Kyler are his legs. Like his arm's always going to be there. We saw how he played with DeAndre Hopkins. Like we saw how he was with Larry Fitzgerald. We saw glimpses of it with Marvin Harrison Jr. Like the kid has touch, the kid has timing, the kid has power. Like if he truly wanted to be a drop back passer, he could do it. He has the arm to do it. I will say this, and this is going to come up at some point, is his size. He has admitted that sometimes he can't see over the offensive line. That could be an issue. That's why he kind of moves a little bit more than obviously up. That's why he kind of shifts the pocket so we can kind of see a little bit. Shotgun works with that, can counter that. But he has admitted that in the past that it is an issue. But if you spread things out with him and kind of let him start to fling it, like Minnesota has one of the best receivers in the NFL. He will get the ball to him. Like we have seen him figure out how to put that touch on the ball to get it just outside the reach of a defensive back. Like he will do it. He can do it. And I'm actually very intrigued with kind of with the line that the Vikings have, with the run game they have, with the other weapons, like how big of a season Justin Jefferson is going to have, because Kyler does have the arm that people have questioned.
In terms of the numbers throwing down the field, deep ball, is that receiver related, or was something off with the offense, or was something off with the way he threw it? Because when you look at the 2021 deep numbers, I mean, it's incredible. PFF gives him a 99 grade throwing over 20 yards down the field. And what I did notice is that his grade is different from his statistics. The grade is better, which usually means that wide receivers are involved. And I was looking at some 2023 and 2022 receivers that he was throwing to, and I was like, I don't know who these people are, which is maybe a little different from having DeAndre Hopkins. But what was the story with him and Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because there are some insane drops that happened from Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. And there's plays where it looks like maybe the route depth isn't right, or they're not on the same page. There's at least 2 or 3 in 2025 where Murray drops back, throws the ball, and there is literally no one there. And it's like Marvin Harrison looking around like, wait, was that me? Was I supposed to do that? Why was it? Well, give me the deep ball and the Marvin Harrison Jr. Why those things didn't click.
So let's start with Marv. Like, I still don't have an answer to this. I have asked everyone and their mothers, I've said on the record, off the record, tell me however you want to tell me. Nobody will touch it. So the drops are interesting. To me, the miscommunications are way more interesting. I mean, I can't tell you. You watch like Marv goes this way, the ball goes that way, and you're just like, what's going on here, guys? Like it happened more often than it should. And what was interesting to me is going into Marv's rookie year and going into last year, all we heard was, oh, we spent so much time together this offseason. Kyler took everyone to LA twice to like work out and get their timing right. They threw all offseason, and then it was still happening. So what was the issue? Was it quarterback driven? Was it receiver driven? Was it both? My guess it was both. Like I said, nobody will talk about it. So it was clearly an issue inside that building. And it was obvious. It was embarrassing to a point, right? Like you, to have that once or twice, I get it, right? Like things happen. But to have that many mistakes on, not just like, it's not like Marv ran the route 2 yards shy of where the ball was. It was, he turned one way and the ball was the other. Like it was wild. The deep ball thing's interesting, right? So obviously, when you have a receiver who's DeAndre Hopkins, you can do a lot of things. You know, he will make you right a lot. And Kyler also can throw. He knows how to throw guys open. So the combination of having a guy whose hands are what 3XL, I think it was 4XL, who can go and just make all and catch radius is massive. With combined with a quarterback who can put the ball anywhere, things work. Um, but you made a good point. Look at the guys Kyler played with, the line he played behind. It just, you put all that together, coupled with kind of them instructing him, like, let's try to get that check down and keep the ball moving. Like, wasn't going on the field as much, right? Like, especially, I think the one thing about him is he can be erratic at times. He can make bad decisions at times. He makes some of his picks are just really, really bad. And even he will admit that. I think that that was their way of kind of trying to counter that last year. Is let's not make that a hero play. Let's try to check it down and keep the chains moving, keep the ball in our hands. Because on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 5, even you don't need to go and try to squeeze in between 4 defenders to Marv. You can take, James Conner in the flat and get the first down. And then on the first down, we can try to make that play, right? Like there are a lot of those types of things. And but I think when you take a step back and you look, it's a combination of the offensive directives, the receivers he was playing with, and the offensive line. Like if you're not given a lot of time and you're on the move, like I don't care how athletic you are, like the plays aren't going to come together like they should.
There's definitely times where he also passed up some opportunities, I think, to push down the field. Like you're talking about, there's a play in the New Orleans game where he decides to scramble, but if he reads it for just one beat more, I mean, his guy's got a beat. He can throw it up over the top. And I also noticed that what he has done recently, and I don't know if he always did this, is he will guide the ball out there to a spot. And there are a couple throws on his tape, one from the New Orleans game, where he glides the ball like 40 yards down the field to Harrison. And it's just beautiful. It just like, it's almost like someone just delicately laid it right into his hands. But that takes the ball tracking, the separation, like he's going to deliver it to a spot. And then it's kind of on you to figure it out, like how to track the
100%.
football and to get to it. He's not going to rocket laser it in there, which is kind of what Sam Darnold did a lot of times. So it's going to be a little bit different where there's going to be more jump ball opportunities. And one of the things I noticed from Marvin Harrison is the separation ability. It's just not really there. And I think that you need to be able to do that. And Justin Jefferson, of course, is a masterclass in that, and so is Jordan Addison. So I think that those played into it. How about the throwing over the middle is another subject that comes up a lot. Now, when I looked at his numbers from 2024, throwing in between the hashes, his stats are fine. He just doesn't do it that much, but it's overstated versus kind of what you think about a smaller quarterback and throwing over the middle. I don't think that he's going to, like Kirk Cousins did, live between the hashes. But I also think that from what I've seen, I just don't feel like that's this massive problem. But how did you see that? Like, was that a discussion during his time about getting the ball over the middle and seeing the field?
No, I honestly don't think about. Like, there's a lot of topics about Kyler Murray that we covered, and that honestly was not one of them. Like seeing the field is obviously a thing, right? That was a topic. but specifically going over the middle, it never really came up. Um, I think for plays to work over the middle, which as everyone knows, like it's all about timing, right? You got to have that extra beat to let the guy go. Um, slants are different, but like if you guys truly come, like I don't know, it was never something that came up. So, but him seeing the field, like he has, like I said earlier, he has admitted like sometimes he can't see it. Some of the throws that he misses are a product of usually two reasons, right? Like he's on the move and he can't see something across the field, or he just misses it because he doesn't see it. And could a 6'6" quarterback see it? Maybe. And it's kind of the what do you want as a coach? Do you want the guy who can get out of trouble, scramble, make he can make a lot of mistakes on the offensive line right because he can he can get away from trouble, or do you want that 6'6" quarterback who'll stand in the pocket like a Justin Herbert, make the throws, let guys crumble around his knees, and he's not moving? Like, what do you want as a coach? I think Kyler, obviously, he can't do that, right? He's 5'10". I'm basically the same size. I'm a little bigger than him, a little taller than him. But it's what do you want out of a quarterback? Do you want a guy who can do that? I think Kevin O'Connell's going to have to decide, like, to what degree do you want that? But in terms of over the middle, honestly, like, that's not something that ever really came up. Seeing the field came up, but not specifically over the middle.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because, I mean, that's a thought that you have with Kevin O'Connell wanting to attack the middle. But I think attacking the middle is more about rhythm and timing and being on the same page than it is about necessarily seeing the field. Because if you've ever watched Steve Young's A Football Life documentary, he talks about how he turned a corner in the NFL when he realized he wasn't going to be able to see stuff. He wasn't a tall quarterback, and he was just going to have to trust and believe in the timing and the footwork and everything else. So how about this, Josh? If Kevin O'Connell gives you a call, he should. Kyler Murray inside and out. He should give you a call. And he asked you, "Hey, Josh, I know you're a Minnesota guy. You're one of us at heart. You may live in the desert now. You may not have to deal with the foot of snow that we have on our way, Josh, but
I don't.
you know Minnesota, you know the culture, and you know Kyler Murray. So if KOC called you and said, how can I make this work? Give me one piece of advice that will make my relationship with Kyler Murray and the Minnesota Vikings work. What would you say to him?"
First off, I'd tell him it's 83 degrees here right now. Start with that. And then I would tell him, I'd say two things actually. Coach him hard, right? Like he truly is receptive to coaching. He can read through the BS. But also I would say, hey, take advantage of Justin Jefferson being the face of the franchise. Don't put that on Kyler. Like, he's a naturally quiet human being. Okay. He's not the rah-rah type. He's not the guy that's gonna break down the huddle. He accept him for who he is as a person and kind of let him do his job that way. But like, don't put too much on his plate in terms of leadership. Like he can lead, but he also like if you have someone who's louder who will be that rah-rah guy, let them do that. And let Kyler just do his job, especially in a 1-year situation. Like maybe long term you have those conversations, but like just kind of let him be who he is. And I think if you can do that, if you can coach him hard, don't BS him, I think that it could work. I think it could really work.
So, FanDuel is a sponsor of the show. Their over under is 8.5 for the Vikings after this Kyler Murray move. Which way would you go? Not asking you to advocate to the audience, but just throwing that number out there for you.
I don't know what you guys did in free agency, so that's the big thing, right? Like,
Nothing. The answer is literally nothing. So whatever you think they had last year, they still have outside of 2 defensive tackles.
Will those 2 defensive tackles affect the 3rd-ranked defense in the NFL?
Maybe a bit, but they did not perform to the level that they were supposed to, which is why they're not here anymore. And Brian Flores came back. So the assumption is that they're going to have a top 10 defense.
Okay. I think I can see them winning more than 8.5. I think I can see them winning more than 8.5. That division's tough though, right? The division's not easy. He also knows how to win. Like Here's the thing: a lot of people don't realize around the country. He had the Cardinals in first place in the NFC West at Week 11 of 2024. Granted, they fell off a cliff, no pun intended. After that, they never recovered. Like they're still in free fall, but like he can get teams to heights, and I think if he has the right people around him, they can go. Like they can keep going up. So, internet. I mean, it's a tough division. Don't get me wrong. I think that deep. I know from what I hear, that offense is very hard to pick up. Like it's very complex, and it might take him a little bit to get it. But I think there's a possibility 8.5 wins. He can win more than 8.5 games.
I think that the word to describe the entire situation with Kyler and why you do it is upside, that the upside is higher than 8.5 games. And I'm not sure anybody else could have given that. Even Geno Smith, who I think is talented, but is such a turnover machine that it's always around 500. Okay, one more thing, Josh, and I hate to do this to you, but the Arizona Cardinals over under on FanDuel is 4.5. So, since you brought up your 83-degree weather, I'm going to ask you about what the Cardinals are doing. I'm going to tell you the truth, though. I think that they are living in reality for the first time in a while, and they are accepting their fate. And man, they're accepting it super hard. That division, there's no chance for them with the three teams that they're playing against. And I think you're going to be covering a top 3 draft pick quarterback in 2027, and that will be great for you and your content. That seems like the plan. But can they get to 5?
Here's the thing: I don't know, and I'm not trying to sidestep this, but like the schedule has a lot to do with it. Like you want to come back to me in May, we can have this conversation. I don't know. I don't know. Like talent wise, here's the thing: you have 3 very good receivers. Trey McBride's all pro. Michael Wilson, 1,000 yards. Marvin Harrison, like he still pulled up 800 yards last year, right? You have the pieces. This running backs room when they added Tyler Algier. I think it's how you say his name. James Conner will be healthy again. You have Trey Benson. Like they have the pieces. I think what they did on the offensive line, adding a lot of experience, I think was a good move. Um, I mean, I don't know. Wait till we see the schedule, and then I mean, obviously that plays a lot into it because like last year they should have been 5-0, 6-0, and then after that, who knows what was going to happen? And obviously they didn't, but like that schedule is very favorable. They just didn't live up to it. So I don't know. All depends on how those games play out or how the schedule plays out. But I don't know. They have the talent to win more than 5 games. I think offensively at least.
If Gardner Minshew or Jacoby Brissett can get the job done, or whomsoever else arrives there
But
in Arizona.
here's the thing: like last year, the offense wasn't. I mean, it took off with Jacoby. Jacoby Brissett was a top-ranked quarterback in a lot of categories from week 6 on. But when your defense is giving up 40 points multiple games, 37 points, like I don't care who you are, like you're probably not going to win those games. So they brought back the defensive coordinator. So and what's also fascinating about this team is they spent last offseason rebuilding their defense, and it didn't work. So this year they're also rebuilding their defense. Let's see if it works. So that's the question.
I would call it. Here's what I would call it, and I know that I know that you don't want to go here. I would call it, since this is the way we're talking about. We're talking about basketball as ethical basketball. I would call it ethical tanking. It's they're going to put out a football team that, if people show up to the stands, is not just going to fall down and lose 40-0 because you have pro quarterbacks and pro players. But they also would prefer probably to have them go 3-14, but not look like the Jets, not have it be like that. But remember, I mean, the tank for Tua when they had Ryan Fitzpatrick, that team won like 5 or 6 games. They were in a lot of games. They were pretty fun, but it's just hard when you have to play Seattle, the Rams, and the 49ers 2 times each. It's just hard to see them winning too many of those games.
2 things. A, if I had 70 points with 9 minutes left to go, I'm going for the record. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how many let me shoot 85 free throws. I don't care. I still got the points, right? Like it's ridiculous. Secondly, I'm not going to touch the T word. I don't think players tank. I don't care what anyone says. I've been around these guys long enough. Like you can't tank in the NFL. You're going to get yourself extremely hurt if you tank in the NFL. Well, you're going to lose your money because it's not guaranteed contracts. Like that's something to like. If you tank on your own, like you're going to get whatever. I don't touch a T word. I'll let you handle that. I'll let you handle all that.
Well, from a front offices do, players do not. Those guys are obviously going to give everything they have, but front offices that maybe bench their star quarterback, they tend to do that a little bit more. But Josh, I can't tell you enough, man, how great the insight is here. And this is all I ask of people is to just read the stuff that you've put out there. I've been reading your stuff for years because we've talked a number of times on the show over the years when I was used to do radio, bring you on then, or when it first started with the podcasting before we did video. I've had you on then. And I just don't think it's too much to ask because there's a lot of these things that people just parrot when it comes to Kyler Murray that aren't necessarily true. And then there are shades of truth with some things about criticism because he's not a Super Bowl champion quarterback at this moment. So there have been reasons why they failed that are connected to him. But it's been difficult for me as someone who's read your work to be like, well, actually, like some of this stuff just exists on the internet because, well, the internet is right about everything. You know, they know every right play call. They know every right move to make. They know every single player inside and out, and all their jokes and all their memes are all perfectly accurate and fair, right? So anyway,
100%,
exactly, at least in their own minds. So anyway, and all the draft analysts, they always perfectly nail it with Shadur Sanders and so forth.
Every time.
100% hit rate. Not that I'm cynical about any of this, but
no, not at all. I can tell.
Josh, no, you really do. You really do phenomenal work. And I hope for you, I'm rooting for you that the Cardinals prove everybody wrong and people get to read your stuff and you get some of those sweet Kevin Seifert hits on TV that make you look all great on ESPN. I hope you get some of those for Arizona very soon, man. If not, the Mercury I know will be relevant again, but I really do appreciate your work, man. And thank you for all the time coming on here and breaking it down.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the kind words.
All right. Take care, Josh. There is Josh Weinfuss, great reporter for ESPN. You heard him break down every one of the questions that a lot of people ask. And I think that if you are just joining and missed the part where he was talking about Kyler Murray's work ethic and called the questions about his ability to learn an offense or the study habits, he called it ridiculous. You might want to go back through that segment about how Kyler Murray had a much different approach to learning Drew Petzing and his offense because it was so different from Cliff Kingsbury. And he said that it was a different Kyler Murray in 2024 and 2025 than he had covered early on in Kyler Murray's career, which I think is really interesting. And it's something that we've discussed time and time again on the show, is that you are allowed to grow, you're allowed to change, you're allowed to advance as a human being. You're not, when you're 22, the same as you are when you're 28 years old. A lot of people grow a lot, but especially pro athletes as they become more experienced and so forth. And also as a player in terms of what he did to prepare and his connection with the coaching staff. And you heard it laid out that Kyler Murray had a great relationship with Drew Petzing and with Jonathan Gannon. So the idea that he's uncoachable or doesn't want to learn an offense, and it's really funny as we get more and more into this. Now, some of the, I call them the Illuminati, there's a group of people in the football world who spend a lot of time breaking down the tape. Some of them are former scouts, or some of them are just good at analysis, and that's what they do, or have studied it. We have some of those people on the show. And now that Kyler Murray is relevant in Minnesota, all of a sudden I'm starting to see these people's opinions start to crop up about watching Kyler Murray tape and his fit and all that sort of stuff. And I just saw Ted Wynn from The Athletic, who was on the show at the Combine, one of the best when it comes to breaking down tape. In fact, someone with the Vikings once told me that they felt that Ted was the best when it came to the X's and O's. And he just tweeted out that, hey, there's a lot more on this Kyler Murray tape that is similar to Kevin O'Connell's offense than I expected. And it's like, goes right back to the point. No one has actually watched Kyler Murray play football since about 2021 because of where the Arizona Cardinals have been at. Plus, he missed a lot of time with the ACL injury. So let's get into, let's get Manny Hill in here. And, Manny has been here for all the debates, all the arguments, the Darnold winning the Super Bowl and so forth. And I thought I can't end the week with all this discussion without Manny Hill giving his take on the Vikings landing Kyler Murray. So, Manny, welcome. Welcome to the show. And I'm just going to move aside here and I'm going to give you the floor. And I want you to tell me everything you think about the Vikings getting Kyler Murray. Go ahead.
I think that I think there's a lot of reason for optimism that the Vikings can put together a really good season in 2026, because you're now going to have a quarterback running this offense that has experience and has had success in the past. And he's not a guy that's like over the hill and in his mid to late 30s and, hey, maybe we can squeeze one more good season out of him. Maybe there's a little bit left in the tank for Kyler Murray. No, this is a guy that is at a very similar age that Sam Darnold was when he got to the Minnesota Vikings in 2024, kind of going right into the prime age of his career into his late 20s. And he's a guy with a lot of really good physical talent. And people are going to talk about the height and everything. I just think it's a lazy, I don't want to say meaningless argument, because I do think that his height will come into play in certain situations. But I think to just say, well, he sucks because he's 5'10", I think is just very lazy. And it just kind of shows that you either haven't been watching or you have watched and you just don't want him because you want JJ McCarthy to be the guy, and that you're upset because JJ McCarthy is not going to be the guy in 2026. And none of this means, Coller, by the way, that JJ McCarthy's career is done and over and just cast him aside. He still has an opportunity to turn things around, as we've seen with other quarterbacks in what they've done with their career, Sam Darnold being one of those guys. So I think if you're Kevin O'Connell and you're looking at what you have as a roster, and it seems like they're running everything back with bringing some of the guys back, Aaron Jones, bringing him back. We'll see what happens with the Jonathan Grenard stuff and the speculation there. But for the most part, the Vikings are running things back with this roster. I think you need to try and put in a quarterback who can run this offense, or run some variation of it, who still has a lot of ability, and give yourself a chance to compete and win this division. You find a way to get that to happen, and then you just kind of see what happens in the playoffs. You win the division, you get a home playoff game, you maybe win that. Maybe you get a favorable matchup in the next round, and you see what happens after that. But I think to just immediately dismiss Kyler Murray as a possibility here, just because you want to stick with JJ McCarthy, I think that is because I've seen some people say, well, this is risky bringing Kyler Murray in. You're paying him $1.3 million. How is that risky? A bigger risk is sticking with JJ McCarthy with no plan of a backup whatsoever and just rolling right into 2026 with basically the same setup that you had in 2025 and then just expecting it to be better. That's a bigger risk to me. So I think that this move makes a lot of sense, especially the fact that you're paying him nothing. He's still getting a lot of money in 2026 from the Cardinals in sort of dead cap, money that they still owe him. So I think people need to just embrace this, see what happens. I think it has a possibility of being really fun and entertaining. I mean, you watch Kyler Murray play, he's kind of fun to watch. When he's playing well, it's pretty good football and it's pretty entertaining. So I think that this has a chance to be fun and entertaining. Let's just let it play out and see what happens.
Leonard, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate that. And, when we had Josh Weinfuss on just earlier, I know you haven't listened to that interview, Manny, because you just jumped into the room, but he was talking about a lot of the things that are said about Kyler Murray, and some of them have truth to them. I mean, clearly his height is a truth, and there are some plays that you watch where he tries to make a play and it's just like, come on, man, like you're trying to do too much. And there's a lot of plays where he comes off the first read too quickly. And I think that those are very rational criticisms of Kyler Murray, and they could be things that ultimately hold him back. But I also think that when we compare the circumstances, and we know how much circumstances mean to the success of a quarterback, and we go through and compare from the Arizona Cardinals and what he had there versus what the Minnesota Vikings have, I mean, there's just no matching those two things up. This is night and day. This is a AAA team versus an MLB team. And I know the Minnesota Vikings don't have 17 Super Bowl rings, but they do have a lot of wins under their belt. They do have a head coach who now has coached for 4 seasons, and 3 of them are winning seasons. Even as bad as things were at times last year, they end up with a winning season. He has twice gotten excellent performances out of veteran quarterbacks. Oh, by the way, they have the best wide receiver that money can buy in Justin Jefferson. This is just not similar to the 2024 or 2025 Arizona Cardinals. And by the way, when Kyler Murray was starting over the last 2 seasons, so we're not even looking back at his peak, his last 2 seasons, they went 8-9 and then 2-3. So that is 10 and 12. So it's 1 game off of a 500 record, which watch the San Francisco game back and you'll just be like, how did they not win that game? Or, I mean, my gosh, how about the game against Tennessee where the guy is going to score a touchdown and then fumbles the ball before he goes into the end zone? So anyway, but 10 and 12. When Jacoby Brissett started, they were 1-11. So, I mean, that's what that's the degree of franchise that we are talking about that Kyler Murray is coming to, as opposed to a team that under Kevin O'Connell between 2024 and 2025 won 14 plus 9 is 23 and 8 is 11, 23 and 11 over the last 2 seasons with Kevin O'Connell. It's just not the same. One owner gets an F, one owner gets an A. One head coach is fired. The other one was coach of the year last year. These things are very, very different. But I think that there are reasonable questions about what the ceiling could be. So here's what I want to do. Earlier on the show today, I talked with Kevin Seifert and I laid him out my pie chart of percentages that each outcome will happen. And the different outcomes were it goes amazing and they want Kyler to be the franchise quarterback. The next one is that it just goes okay and they're left with a pretty tricky spot. And the third one is that it doesn't go that well and they know what they're doing into the future at quarterback, and we'll see at coach. And then the other one is it's a total disaster, and McCarthy ends up playing half the season anyway because the wheels completely come off. So those are the 4 potential outcomes. What I want to talk about with you is not the percentage chance, but what happened to get there, and then what happens if that's what goes down. So why don't we talk about the highest potential outcome here first, and then we'll work our way down. In order for Kyler Murray to get to, let's say 11 wins is you're a reasonable Super Bowl contender if you can win 11 games. If he plays well enough, that means you have a good defense. It means the running game was good enough. It means they replaced the punter. It means that Will Reichard was pretty good, and it means you're not perfect, but you're a contender. And you can win a division with 11 games. What in your mind boxes would they have to check with Kyler Murray specifically? Because we know that the defense is capable of being good. We know Will Reichard can make the field goals. What boxes specifically would Kyler Murray have to check for you in order to get to that best case scenario?
Well, I think number one, first and foremost, is I think he's got to be healthy. We know he had the foot injury last year. Now, he probably could have came back and played, but they decided that they wanted to tank the season the rest of the way. And they just said, okay, Kyler, we'll just shut you down for the rest of the year. But, Kyler does have a history of injuries. I think number one, first and foremost, is stay healthy for the entire season or as many games as possible. If he misses a game or 2, so be it. But stay healthy. That's number one. I think number 2 is find a very strong connection with Justin Jefferson. I think for this offense, regardless of who the quarterback is, the connection to Justin Jefferson has to be there. Otherwise, this offense has no chance whatsoever. So that's number 2. And I think number 3 is, and it kind of alludes to what you've kind of talked about, is, he doesn't try to do too much, and he doesn't try to make the big play every single time. That he just kind of plays within the confines of the offense. When the easy throw is there, take it. If you see a guy and he's downfield and he's wide open, by all means, get the football there. And he's got the ability to do that. But if it's not there, don't do anything crazy. Take care of the football. And I think it should be fine. And, I think it's play off of the rest of your team as well. This is a talented roster, and, you're going to have, in theory, a good defense. We'll see what the, run defense and the pass rush from the interior guys will look like with Allen and Hargrave gone. But, this still figures to be a good defense. So understand that, this defense might be able to win you a couple of games this year. You don't have to throw for 300 or 400 yards. And I think that kind of plays back into trying not to do too much. But I think those things are going to be, if all those things come together right, I think this team can be 11-6. Maybe they steal a game and go 12-5, and we'll see what happens after that.
I think you covered a lot of the bases there. I will add to this that the connection between Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray has to be a little more than skin deep. It can't just sort of be a regular quarterback and head coach relationship, which I think is probably one of the strongest points for Kevin O'Connell, just as a coach in general. I mean, he is, and I've not covered a ton of NFL coaches because it's really just been Mike Zimmer, but even when I was in Buffalo, there's a handful of coaches that came through there, and I covered hockey before this as well. Kevin O'Connell is the most unique in terms of the way that he communicates with his players and especially his quarterbacks that I have ever covered. I think that he has this real willingness to be extremely open with them and to lay it all out there for why we do every single thing that we do. And what Josh Weinfuss, the Arizona Cardinals ESPN reporter, said earlier is that despite some people who do not cover Kyler Murray like Josh does and what they say on whatever tweets, he said that Murray likes to be pushed by his coaches and that he appreciated Drew Petzing and his style of they would have a lot of debate and conversation about how to approach stuff. So being in that room and having that connection and watching the film together, and this is something that Kevin O'Connell did with Sam Darnold. And I know that, coaches do this, but I think that that's a strength of his with Sam Darnold, where throughout OTAs and minicamp, they had a lot of discussions. And I remember hearing, maybe O'Connell said this at a press conference or something, or maybe someone said it to me, that Sam Darnold was a lot farther ahead from an intellectual standpoint than they knew. Like, they didn't really know when they got him because he had struggled and everything else. And there was sort of an assumption that Sam is all physical skill and doesn't know what he's doing out there. And it was like, oh, actually, once you start breaking it down with him, as opposed to here's how we do it and this is the only thing that we're going to do, it's really a collaboration between the head coach and quarterback. And I also think that might have been a struggle with him with JJ McCarthy because McCarthy doesn't know enough. I mean, truly, and it's not his fault, but he just doesn't know enough. He can't communicate with you the same way Kirk Cousins can. He can't speak the language the way that Kyler Murray can, having been in the NFL for this long. I think if that connection sustains between those two and they communicate of what Kyler sees, what works for him, what he's comfortable with, and also where Kevin O'Connell could turn the dial up a little bit. Because with Kirk Cousins, there were times where Kevin O'Connell, you could see, was saying, like, you got to push that ball in there. And I know you're not comfortable with it, but you got to do that. And that was something that he always struggled with Mike Zimmer and even at times with Kevin O'Connell. I think that's one. Here's the other one for me, Manny. I think in order to get to 11 or 12 with a roster that has not been improved at all through free agency so far, and more guys are coming off the board, and I'm going, Roger McCreary, that would have been fine. Andre Sisco, sure. No one even knows who you are, really, but you might be okay. And all these guys are just gone now at this point, and there's no free agents that are coming in to save you. So from that perspective, I think some things got to go wrong for some teams in the NFC North. That is always a part of it, right? Like, somebody has to have, like the Packers did, a Micah Parsons injury last year, one of these quarterbacks might have to get hurt. The Chicago Bears might have to drop every interception instead of grabbing every interception like they did last year. And no one thought those guys were good, by the way, because Nashawn Wright got no money. Kevin Byard got no money. It's like none of the teams believe that was sustainable or real. And the Detroit Lions, they're trying to rebuild their line. They're trying to revamp their defense a bit. And that needs to not work with a new offensive coordinator, or at least some combination of those things to make those teams imperfect. Because while I see a very nice scenario potentially of winning 11 games, I don't see one where they win 14 or they win 15. Right. I mean, I know we never saw that coming with a lot of different Viking seasons, but I mean, that to me is beyond the realm of even having a discussion. Now, if they were to win 11 to 12 games, Manny, let's say they even host the playoff game. We're going to discuss 4 scenarios here, and the best one here is they host the home playoff game. They win the NFC North with Kyler Murray. Where does that put you with Kyler long-term? Because something that I only discussed briefly on the show, the 3-hour and 45-minute show the other day, was the fact that he does not have a franchise tag, or you cannot franchise tag Kyler Murray. That's part of the deal. They had to say, all right, we are not going to franchise tag you. So, I mean, that means you have to negotiate a new contract with him or let him go. Where do you think they would stand with Kyler Murray if he led them to a division championship?
That is a great question. I think it would depend on how it feels. I think it would kind of depend on how it feels. It's kind of funny that I'm suggesting this, because this is kind of how they played out the Sam Darnold thing, where they basically let the last couple of games of the season determine whether or not they were going to keep him. But I guess it would be in a little bit of a different situation, because you have a better idea of what you have in JJ McCarthy at that point. I think if they win the division and Kyler plays really well throughout the season, I think you have to think about negotiating a new deal with him, because you don't really know what the other side of door number 2 is. And you're still going to have Justin Jefferson. You're still going to have your core players intact. And if you have a great season in 2026 where you win the division and maybe you win a playoff game or 2, I gotta think you would want to continue that, because if you decide, oh, okay, well, we're gonna run back, we're gonna go back to JJ McCarthy now because we don't want to pay Kyler Murray, and we don't want to give him an extension and pay him $50-something million a year. Well, here's the deal: if you do go that route and decide to go back to McCarthy, and he comes back and he, the year off was, the year as a backup was good for him, and he improved and he played well. And then he comes back in 2027 and plays really well for you. Guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to pay him.
Right.
Right. So this is kind of what the NFL is, because I saw a couple of people today where they were like, wow, well, if he plays well, they're going to have to pay him $50-some million a year. It's like, yeah, that's what you have to do in the NFL. That's what the NFL is. You have a quarterback and he plays well for you and you win some games, you have to pay him.
Right.
Otherwise, somebody else will.
So I want to make a point about this. With Kirk Cousins, everyone's been scarred for life with Kirk Cousins and paying a quarterback. Right. There's no question about that. And that's completely fair. But I think it's also worth pointing out that Sam Darnold won 14 games and he got a contract extension and won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
It's not like the rookie quarterback contract advantage is wonderful. It's glorious. You would wish it on everyone if you could. Matthew Stafford was under a pretty big contract last year and was in the NFC Championship game. Jordan Love was under a pretty big contract last year. They were 9-3-1 when Micah Parsons got hurt, and then Love got hurt later in the season. They purposefully didn't play their starters in a game, but I'm just saying Green Bay's not perfect, but they're a pretty good football team. The Detroit Lions have been a Super Bowl contender for several years. They paid Jared Goff. Now, I can hear everyone in the comments section without even opening up that window on my computer saying, that's because they drafted well, and you're not wrong about that. You are not wrong about that. But, I mean, even if we go through Brock Purdy, divisional round quarterback, he got paid. Trevor Lawrence, 13 wins, got paid. Josh Allen is a little bit different because he is unfreaking believable, but still a quarterback who has some money in his pocket. Justin Herbert was in the playoffs. If he has 2 offensive linemen, he wins that game probably against the New England Patriots, but instead he had 0. I mean, Jalen Hurts is another example. Won the Super Bowl after signing his contract. The reason that today is now a little different from the Kirk conversation is this. Number one, Kirk's contracts were always laid out in the worst possible way. They were laid out in the shortest term with the most Kirk control, and they were fully guaranteed. And also he had a no trade clause in one of them. And it was, you can't move this gigantic stone from you can't slide it. You can't push it. It's stuck there. And let's also keep in mind that front office paid Anthony Barr and they paid Eric Kendricks, and we love those guys. And they're great players, but they paid everyone from the 2017 team. They were not very diligent, and they didn't, look around the edges and make moves toward the future and say, hey, actually, we could get this production from this player out of this other guy that we signed for 1/3 of the price. It was, we love him. We got to keep him. We love him. We got to keep him. So if you're going to sign Kyler Murray, here's the point, is you have to sign him to a contract that does not do that. That is not a big giant anchor. And you have to also be savvy, and you have to stack draft capital. And the next general manager, this is maybe why you have a next general manager, will have to draft better and will have to have way more draft picks. And then the other part of it too is, with the amount that the salary cap goes up every single year, I mean, it's just hard to see it ever stopping. I mean, they're going to play games in like Australia and on the moon and on the night before Thanksgiving. And I just don't see all of a sudden the NFL being like, man, we just don't have any money. And I think it was Pelissero that put it out there, Manny, and I'm going to forget the percentage, but I think Pelissero had it. It was like, just 5 years ago, this thing was 200 million. And now it's 300 million. That's like a 5-year span. And I don't have the exact details right, but it's something like that. Like this very short period of time where it's jumped from 200 to 300 million, the amount that you can use in the salary cap. So all of these things are a little different. And if you were really sold on the relationship and you were really sold on the performance and you have a plan to build this roster around him the way that some other teams have with expensive quarterbacks, it can be done. But let us move, Manny, to the next layer down as we address 4 different potential outcomes for Kyler Murray. This one is the hard one. You win 10 games and you have a road playoff game and you do not win that road playoff game. And Kyler Murray ranks as the 16th best quarterback by PFF and EPA and whatever other stat people want to use. He is a dead in the middling quarterback. It was a fun season. It was a decent season. It was competitive. I love calling things ethical now, because just sarcastically, because I see it all the time. Like Bam Adebayo, like unethically scoring 83 points and stuff. It's like, you have an ethical football season for the Minnesota Vikings. It's respectable, but it's not stupendous. How did they get there? And then what happens then?
I think that I feel like, and to be totally honest, I think this is probably the most likely scenario, this whole thing, the way, if it plays out that way. I think it happens this way. Kyler has a pretty good season. Statistically, it's a pretty good season. He probably misses, maybe 2 or 3 games because of injury. And you see McCarthy, and, McCarthy is okay. So signs of being better, but it's still not quite what you need it to be able to win games consistently. And then they just kind of deal with some injuries that they can't really overcome. There's injuries on defense, injuries on the offensive line, and just going back to the first scenario, I think, the entire roster being as healthy as possible is going to have to play into that too, if they win 12 or, 11 or 12 games. So this scenario, 10 wins, make the playoffs, but don't win. I think it's going to come down to dealing with some injuries that are tough to overcome, Kyler has an okay season, but not a great season. And then what do they do after that? That's where you get into a really, really tough situation, because you don't want to be in the Kirk Cousins type of situation that they were in 2018, 2019, where you feel compelled to pay him because you're worried about what door number 2 actually is. And you've probably seen JJ McCarthy play a couple of games because Kyler missed a few and he doesn't look great. And so you're like, well, we don't really want to go back to McCarthy. Now we're going to have to think, if we're going to let Kyler go, do we need to draft a quarterback? What does the draft class in 2027 even look like? Are you going to have to use draft capital to move up maybe into like a top 5 spot? And if you're 10-7, that means it made the playoffs. That means you probably have like the 20th or 21st pick in the draft. You're trying to jump from there to the top 5 to take a quarterback. That's going to cost you a lot of draft capital to be able to do that. So that I think is a scenario where all of those things will be kind of thought about, of like, okay, well, this was fine, but now what do we do? Now what do we do? We're kind of stuck in no man's land like we were with Kirk Cousins for the better part of 6 years. And that's probably the worst position for them to be in theory.
I think what it would really depend on is just how it looked. So if Kyler Murray was a top 8 quarterback by PFF, and they lost 5 players on defense on the first night of the season, which is kind of what happened last year, where they didn't have Harrison Smith, and then they lose Cashman, and then Aaron Jones goes down, and they lose half of the offensive line by that week too. Darisaw wasn't back, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, like they're just losing players left and right. But overall, he plays really, really well for your team, and you believe that there is a clear path to resolving the other issues on the roster. I think that's where it becomes very tricky here, is you can have a 10-win season from a quarterback where the guy played really well. I mean, was 2019, was that a 10-6 season from Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins that year played well enough for the Vikings to win a playoff game and be in the playoffs, and he was very good that season. And some of the games they didn't get a play here or there, or they did kind of melt down in a couple of big games and so forth. And even then that made for a difficult decision on whether to bring him back, but he played really good football, which is why they decided to bring him back. Their mistake though was not necessarily Kirk in a bubble. It was the rest of the roster. They thought they could rebuild very quickly. And so that would be my question. And I haven't looked forward just yet. We've been a little wrapped up, but haven't looked forward to what the 2027 salary cap looks like. But I'm guessing by the way that they've managed things this offseason, that salary cap is going to be much more favorable. So can you quickly draft players more successfully this year, build on what you have through Dallas Turner, and we'll see where Jordan Addison is at, and you're going to have at least Justin Jefferson under contract and maybe rework an extension for him, and you've got these pieces there that if you feel like you've hit on some draft picks, if you feel like it's a good free agent class that you can go get several of the biggest needle moving names, and that Murray played well enough under those circumstances to be a 12-win quarterback that can put you in position to potentially compete for a Super Bowl, then I would say that you should probably do it anyway, even if it's only 10 wins and even if he was not a perfect quarterback, because on the other side of the hill is, oh my God. And that's what we saw now. And it's really interesting that I think, so let's go back to that list that I was running down of those quarterbacks. And how many of these guys at some point have had the narrative shift on them? Matthew Stafford, 100%. And I will point the finger at myself. When he was with Detroit, I often said, like, he's pretty much a more fun Kirk Cousins who turns the ball over, but he's really like a mid quarterback, and he goes to the right circumstance. He also grows and develops and gets better even later in his career. But I mean, he's the best in the freaking league right now. Like, that's not something
MVP
I ever thought would
league.
happen. Right. Exactly. That's not something I thought would happen. Joe Burrow's always been great. Jordan Love hasn't been starting long enough to have narrative change about him. Neither is Drake May. Brock Purdy. How about Brock Purdy as a good example here of someone who, when they first had success, everyone went, he he's just a product of this, that, and the other thing. Last year, he's the 5th highest graded PFF quarterback. Dak Prescott, it's been all over the place, from elite quarterback that you would draft before anyone else to get rid of that guy and everything else. Trevor Lawrence, there's a great example. So Trevor Lawrence and Sam Darnold are probably and Jared Goff are probably the best examples you could think of, is when wheels came off in their teams, they struggled. And when wheels were on their teams, they were very good. So my point is, if Kyler Murray can show that under KOC, he is capable of playing at the same level, it doesn't have to be a Burrow, but it would have to be like a Darnold. It would have to be like a Trevor Lawrence, 2 imperfect quarterbacks that are very talented and were able to build teams around him to have a good enough chance. I think that this is now the more acceptable theory than it is to try to draft the 5th quarterback again if you're picking 21st in the draft just because of the rookie quarterback contract.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the other thing about, thinking about, the 2027 draft class with quarterbacks is that we think it's going to be good.
Right.
And we think there's going to be a handful of guys that you can kind of pick from. And if you're drafting high enough, you'll get one of them, but that's not guaranteed. I mean, a year ago, everybody thought that the draft class in 2026 was going to be really good. And, Nussmeier was going to be a 1st-round pick and all these other guys. And I don't know when Garrett Nussmeier is going to get drafted. He might be a day 3 pick for all we know. I don't know. Right. And now it's like Mendoza's probably going to be the only guy that goes in the 1st round. If nobody, takes a swing at Ty Simpson. So that part of it, where it makes it tricky is that you can't really bank on just thinking, okay, well, we'll just take a swing again on another quarterback. And, because to your point, that sort of the rookie quarterback thing is a good thing to have, but the quarterback has to be good in order for it to actually work, because the Vikings have done that. They've tried that route with JJ McCarthy, but he hasn't been good yet. And now you're in the situation that you're in where you're trying it with Kyler Murray. So I think if it plays out that way, you win 10 games, you come up short in the playoffs, but Kyler plays really well, I think you do have to think about trying to run it back with him. And again, the nice thing about Kyler Murray that makes it intriguing is that he is only 28 years old now. I think he's going to turn 29 later this year. But he's at an age where, provided he stays healthy, there's still, at least a few more years of him, having the potential to play high-level football and giving you a chance to compete, provided that you surround him with the right talent and the right weapons and a good defense. I think that, it's something to think about when you're trying to make a decision at the end of this season. Now, we're going to get into some of the other scenarios, but I think if it goes well for him, look, Seattle, you said it, Seattle paid Sam Darnold and they won the freaking Super Bowl with him, paying him a decent chunk of change. And it's worked out for him. So I think it's definitely something to consider, because what's behind door number 2 may not go the way that you are, maybe banking on it going.
And maybe there is a Daniel Jones split the difference. Now, I don't love Daniel Jones' contract with Indianapolis because I don't think he's very good. That's more about him, and that franchise is just so middling. I mean, I guess you could say that about the Vikings, but at least we've seen a 14-win season recently with this same coaching staff and a lot of these same players. I'm not sure we could really say that for Indianapolis, but I actually don't think that there's a ceiling of Daniel Jones that says it. That says you are a real contender. We know there was one for Sam Darnold because of his raw talent was through the roof. And so, while it was surprising he won the Super Bowl, it's not shocking that someone who had one of the best arms to come out in the last decade in the draft ultimately ended up having a click with the right team. I feel the same way about Kyler, where you could make this argument of like a 2-year contract where you go, this is like a test the water type thing where you could still potentially draft a quarterback anyway and see what you've got there, or you could still hang on to JJ McCarthy and see what you've got there. Or if McCarthy, and this could depend on him too. I mean, if they won 9 or 10 games and Kyler Murray is just okay, and he's not at all great, but he's not terrible, and you love what you saw from JJ McCarthy. Let's say he gets in 3 games because of some injuries or whatever, and you're just like, this is a different guy. That's Malik Willis. It has happened. That Malik Willis is a different human being from who was playing with Tennessee. He looked lost with Tennessee, and then he looked in total command a couple years later. If that happened, and this is why there's so many different permutations of what could happen here, is then you're starting to have a really difficult conversation of like, well, like, we, it wouldn't be bad to keep Kyler, but do we roll the dice on JJ again? And I actually think it might be a good idea to roll the dice on JJ again if you're not really sold on Kyler as a dude, or as, hey, this was the best he could possibly play and it got us 10 wins, and we just don't think there's anything more really there. They did make that same mistake on Sam Darnold, but they made it after a 14-win season, not the scenario we're throwing out there. Right. The next one down involves JJ a little bit more, because I think it's the non-disaster, but you miss the playoffs scenario. So the 9-10 win one is you get in and you just don't win a playoff game. And then I don't even know, I guess we could talk about what these all mean for KOC. I don't even know what a 10 win, like a playoff appearance, no playoff win. I don't even know what that means for KOC, because it would be a good job to get to the playoffs with another quarterback that you just scooped up. Maybe we should have this conversation now, because like it would be a good job with a quarterback you just scooped up for $1 million that another team was ready to get rid of. It would be a good job with a roster that invested 0 more free agent dollars outside of bringing back Eric Wilson, but it would not be the job that you were hired here to do, which is win in the playoffs. So what do you think that scenario, because I think we all know if they win 12, then, KOC's in great standing and he maybe wins another Coach of the Year award and everybody's happy. But the next one down, I think, is a little more complicated if they're able to just be okay and not win in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Kyler too. I think it's going to depend on like how it looks, and how it kind of feels, because if it plays out that way where they're 10-7, they make the playoffs, but they don't win a game, but Kyler Murray plays really well, throughout that season, I have a hard time really justifying, even though like you want Kevin O'Connell to win a playoff game, and you're looking at him and saying, KOC, it's time to do something in the playoffs when you get there. I have a hard time really getting behind moving on from him, though, if Kyler Murray comes in and plays really well and, you don't get to the heights that you want to get to because you're dealing with some injuries on the defensive side, because that it's a slippery slope, man, because we have seen teams move on from coaches because he needed to go to the NFC Championship game. Because he didn't do that, he's fired. And it doesn't really, the next guy that they bring in isn't that guy. And then now you're like in the depths of hell as a franchise and you become a joke. So I think it's a slippery slope. I'll put it to you like this. If it does play out that way and they decide to move on from KOC, I would understand it. I probably won't agree with it, but I would understand why they would do it. If they decide to keep him, I think it would make a lot of sense to do that, because if it's Kyler Murray playing really well and you get to the playoffs, you move on from the head coach, and now you might as well, at that point, now you look at the Wolves and say, okay, well, now you guys might as well just tank, because
right.
You basically said, yeah, because it's time. You're moving on. You're saying that this wasn't good enough. Now it's just time to really blow this thing up and really start all over, because if your expectations are to win a championship and you don't, then you might as well just try to reset and see if you can do it many years down the road.
What is David Culley doing? That's my question. Or what's he up to? The tank commander of the Houston Texans once upon a time. So my opinion on Kevin O'Connell, and he's one of the most fascinating parts of this for sure, because it's both a referendum and also commentary on what has happened at the quarterback position to this franchise. It's, well, this guy has enough talent for you, so form the bond with him, figure out what he does best, build the ship around him in the right way, run the football better, maximize Justin Jefferson and TJ Hockenson. I mean, have you even taken a second to think about what an average season for those guys would have looked like in last year's team? I mean, an average season for Justin Jefferson is like 500 more yards than he got. And for TJ Hockenson, it's kind of the same. And for Jordan Addison, it's kind of the same. I mean, those guys were held back so freaking much. If you can't make something happen here, if you can't get to the second rung down in our different scenarios, then you've probably done a pretty bad job, or he got hurt. And then if he gets hurt, then it's like, what the hell do we do now with analyzing him? Because if he's 3 times out of his 5 seasons, his quarterbacks are getting hurt. I don't even want to talk about that one because that's such a miserable scenario and we're way too far away from football to talk about that. So we're talking about it as if Murray plays at least 14 games. But if you can't get more than a middling season out of it, there's also a pretty distinct reason, which is because you rolled the dice on JJ McCarthy and it didn't work out, which is also KOC's fault. And they can blame it on Kwesi all they want, and he was absolutely involved, and he shares that blame, but he was not the only one involved. So you can't just say, well, it was the bad man's fault. Well, you could blame him for like Lewis Scene, but I don't think you could blame him for JJ McCarthy. That might influence, like, if we could only find the person responsible for him being in this position where he has to turn around another quarterback. Oh, wait, it's him. So that might be somewhat influential, but my stance on KOC will continue to be that when you find a really, really good coach, he doesn't have to be perfect. He doesn't have to be the greatest Vince Lombardi of all time, but think long and hard and be 100% sure it's time to go. Because if you're not, you'll probably regret it. And a lot of very good coaches have won in their second location. You don't want to be giving away, can you imagine, giving away a Super Bowl winning quarterback and then a Super Bowl winning coach? You really don't want to be doing that. So think long and hard. I also think that same goes for the next scenario down. If this is like a 7 or 8 win season, the odds go up significantly. That, okay, I mean, if they make the playoffs, I'd be very surprised if they did something like that. But if they don't make the playoffs and it's a 7 or 8 win season and the wheels just kind of come off, that might end up being the case. But what do you think, other than injury, we all know injuries, like with Kyler Murray specifically, would have to go wrong? And I'll tell you, if you haven't seen, the over-under on FanDuel for next season is already up and it's 8.5. So they're hitting the under in this scenario. What would have to go wrong with Murray, aside from health, for them to not get at least 9 wins?
I think this would go back to the connection between KOC and Kyler Murray that you talked about earlier. I think that if there is just if Kyler's healthy for the entire season, he plays all 17 games, and there's just, for some reason, him and KOC are just not clicking. It's just not working. And Kyler can't find a way to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. And it's just, for whatever reason, it's just a non-fit. The chemistry is not there. That to me is, if he is healthy and it still plays out that way, that I think that's what we would attribute that to, is just the relationship between KOC and Kyler Murray is just not good. It's just not clicking. And, you know, the team is losing some close games and things are getting away, and then things just kind of go left overall in the locker room. That's where I can see things kind of going belly up a little bit. And, you know, it's 7-10 and it's just not good. And everybody's pissed off at each other. And then I think when that happens, you're very likely just moving on from the coach and trying to start this whole thing over anyway.
I think that you're exactly right to point out that with Kyler Murray, it can be totally fine if you win and he's not the loudest guy. I mean, Sam Darnold wasn't. One of the reasons that teammates love Sam Darnold is he comes to work every day and he does his thing. And I want to say probably 20 press conferences with Sam Darnold. And I only remember a handful of times that we got a little bit of, you know, human Sam Darnold out there. You know, he was very much well-trained in front of the New York media and all that. But even the NFL film stuff after the Super Bowl, like, he's not the most talkative guy. Like, he's a pretty straightforward person. And Murray seems like he's legitimately quiet, just as a person, as his personality. And I think if things go well, then they'll all build him up around him and be pumped. But he's not a guy that is going to sell everybody on him so much to the point where, and this is kind of a theory about maybe why some things have gone wrong at the end of seasons. Like, he's not somebody that's just going to sell everybody, win one for me kind of thing, like in the huddle, and build everybody up, that kind of thing. They need Aaron Jones to do that. They need Hawkinson. They need Jefferson, those guys to take those leadership roles, especially when you're on a 1-year contract and you feel like you're a mercenary quarterback and not really the leader of the franchise. You could see if they're like 6-7 and you need him. And it's a little Kirk-like with Zimmer. Like, you need him to kind of just pull something out and make it happen. But everybody's looking at him like, I just don't think he can do it. And I felt like the locker room vibe difference between, when KOC got there with Kirk and not, I don't know that there was a lot of belief in Kirk that he could turn things around when it went bad the first go around with Zimmer, because that was the tone that was being set from the top. But I think that if that's the case, if they never really buy him into him as a guy, and then things start to go wrong, that's where I think it can start to drift and you end up with a bad season. I also think that we'll know, because I have really, really questioned the idea that Kevin O'Connell just has no idea what he's doing with building an offense for his players. I just think that's ridiculous. Like, how did he get here? By winning the Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator, and then his first year, he's got 13 wins with Kirk. I mean, it's just hard to believe that he can't form an offense to a quarterback when he's done it numerous times and had a front row seat for Sean McVay doing it for different skill sets and things like that. But if Kyler Murray, based on his career and his past, and even in 2024 is the 12th best quarterback in the league, and if this guy is hanging on to reads too long and taking 1 million sacks, which he's never done really in his career, and if he's struggling with the complex nature, which I don't think that he should, based on his career and what he's done so far. If you've been in the league long enough, you kind of already know a lot of these things. But if it's too far over his head, sorry for the pun, I mean, then I think we're going to know. Like, okay, there is a problem here. Then there is a problem. And it's clear that, Darnold got it and was the perfect quarterback for you, but that's, I guess, what you need. And otherwise it's not going to work. So I think that will tell us something if it goes terribly wrong. But I've got one other part of this too, Manny, that we actually need to start talking about here. Because I don't even know how much we have to dive into the total disaster scenario. I think that's everyone's gone and they're drafting a quarterback high.
Yep.
The Minnesota Vikings defense right now, we don't have any information on Harrison Smith yet, which I think it makes me lean a little more toward like coming back if we hasn't decided yet. But we have no information on Harry yet. The defensive line is minus about 65 quarterback pressures. They have signed literally no one other than James Pierre, who I think could be a good player. But they signed him so long ago. Is his name James Pierre? I mean, I'm just like, is that really the only guy that they have signed? What was the guy's name? What if that's not that good? Like, are we feeling confident on, Flores is good, but he's not a miracle worker. Are we feeling confident on the rest of this roster right now?
Well, I think that's another reason why you go and bring in Kyler Murray and take advantage of being able to get him at the league minimum price of $1.3 million for a year, is because it's entirely possible that this defense is not as lights out as it was in 2025. And you're going to need good, at least above average to good quarterback play to kind of offset some of that. Because, JJ McCarthy is just not good enough to be able to overcome a defense maybe taking a bit of a step back from what they were last year, because the defense was really good last year and you still ended up only 9-8 because the quarterback play just wasn't good enough to win at a high level. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Coller, I'm not really expecting the defense to be good overall as a unit.
Yep.
but I'm not expecting it to be as good as it was in 2025 because it's really hard to maintain a elite level defense, a top 5 level defense over the course of multiple years. We saw even with the great defense in 2017 that Mike Zimmer had, the next year the defense was still good, but it wasn't as good as it was. And that was the whole reason why they brought Kirk Cousins in the first place, was because we need to upgrade the quarterback position to be able to offset, the fact that the defense might end up taking a bit of a step back. So I think it's a real thing that this defense in 2026 might not be as good as it was in 2025. And that's where you are going to look to Kyler Murray and say, hey, we need you to add some more credibility to this position to be able to offset, the fact that this defense might not be as good as it was.
I put up red flags analytically when people say, well, if Murray was the quarterback last year, then they would have been this. Well, there actually were things that went right for them last year. There were a lot of things that went wrong for them across the roster, especially early in the season, but there were also things that went right. Eric Wilson kind of had a season for the ages for Eric Wilson, and it's great that you bring him back and he's well deserving, but does he do the same thing? Does Dallas Turner pick up where he left off? Are you going to keep or trade Jonathan Grenard? Which now I am against trading Jonathan Grenard because you didn't sign anybody and you have Kyler Murray. So why are you getting rid of one of your best players? That I'm not really on board with. Isaiah Rodgers and Byron Murphy, let's not forget, they stayed healthy the whole season. And as much as you can act like, well, hey, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, they were disappointing. That is true. But they also gave you like 1,400 snaps or 1,300 snaps or something, and a lot of quarterback pressures. And there's no guarantee that, some combination of Redmond, Levi Drake, Rodriguez, Ty Ingram, Dawkins, like these guys are all going to be able to produce like that, or whoever they bring in or whoever they draft. And with the draft, we also know that you can't have super high expectations for whoever comes in, especially if they're not a top draft pick. There's development that's involved sometimes. So there's a lot of projection across the roster. And one of the things that's very clear is I shouldn't say there's not depth, because you never know who's going to emerge. Like I would have thought I remember my first 53 in 2023, I think I had Josh Metellus getting cut because I was just like, he's just like a special team safety, and I didn't know that Lewis Seen was going to, that thing. I thought he was going to come back and maybe be the starter, right? And you're just like, or at least be a role player. And then he's become a key player for them. So you never know who's going to emerge, but at least as we're trying to project it now, their depth is pretty thin. And also, I saw the chat talking about what they're going to do at center. I think Blake Brandel, I've been saying it since the combine. I heard at the combine, you better prepare yourself for Blake Brandel. And I think that's the same thing here. The offensive line's health. The offensive line depth is very questionable, as it is in most NFL cities. Aaron Jones coming back. Are you drafting a running back and then asking them right away to be a guy? There's just a lot of questions across the roster that we could end up looking at this team and going, man, they got a good season out of Kyler Murray, and it didn't get there. And I'll give you the example because I want to hear from you about this. I asked Seifert this question earlier. I'm very proud of it. The most similar quarterback who came from somewhere else that Kyler Murray's going to be. Like, of all the quarterbacks who came from somewhere else through Vikings history, of which there are many to choose from, who is Kyler going to be the most similar? Who is it going to remind you of or already? My answer was Sam Bradford, because Bradford joined a team that was very good, but also very flawed. Now, if KOC is coaching the 2016 Vikings, they win 11 games and not 8, because he would have not, made his offensive coordinator so mad he quit. Probably.
Wouldn't have called his team soft after losing in Philadelphia.
After going 5-1. But still, like that was a reclamation season for Bradford. He was very good, and it just wasn't good enough. And he was a top 12 quarterback that year, and a lot of things went wrong. So how about so I'm a little skeptical that everything that went right. I feel like we need to know who else is getting added to this roster. And I'm down to like one name left on all of my lists is Jawan Jennings. Please, Jawan Jennings, I'll come to your house and pick you up.
Hey man, I'm like you're talking to like the biggest Jawan Jennings stan on earth.
Tennessee, right?
Tennessee, and
yes,
like one of the biggest plays in Tennessee football history in 2016 to beat Georgia, the Hail Mary from Josh Dobbs to Jawan Jennings to beat the Bulldogs.
I just want anyone. I just want any free agent, please, someone.
Yeah, Jawan Jennings would be nice.
What is this? Who does this remind you of, though? This situation?
Yeah, I think Sam Bradford is a pretty good comparison of, number 1 overall pick, Heisman winner, Oklahoma. It's almost a very similar comparison. Yeah, I think Sam Bradford makes a lot of sense. I kind of thought about Kirk a little bit too, of like, numbers are good, but flawed roster. Can he overcome the flawed roster? He plays really well, but you end up still kind of like in that 9 to 10 win range because he plays good, but it's just not quite enough to like overcome the drastic, flaws or injuries or things like that. But yeah, I kind of think of those two guys as, very similar. But again, like if everything does go well for this team, I mean, it just has a chance to be a pretty damn good football team, right, and a team that can compete for the division. But I think there are a lot of factors that are going to have to come into play. And again, we talked at the start of the offseason when we were talking about, what are they going to do at quarterback? You said it 100 times. We're not going to love any of these, of these options. Yeah. And even, Kyler Murray's the best guy, but, he's not a perfect quarterback. He does have flaws. He does have shortcomings. But I think you just have to give yourself the Vikings need to put themselves in the best position possible to try and win and compete. And Kyler Murray ultimately was the best option out there. And this might not go great, but to me, I applaud them for making the move and giving themselves the best chance, because if it does go well and everybody stays healthy and that connection with KOC and Kyler goes really well, this could be a really fun season that I think exceeds maybe even all of our expectations.
And the range of outcomes is very wide, which is why it makes it so interesting to talk about Kyler Murray, because, I mean, in 2024, the whole summer we're sort of talking about like, well, what week, you and I had this conversation, what week is JJ playing? Like not can Sam Darnold win 14 games? It was Jeff George that Kevin Seifert went with, where it's a number 1 pick who's flawed and who was a perfect fit for what they had. And I think the same goes for Justin Jefferson, because if you look at the way that Kyler Murray very accurately fed the ball to Trey McBride, I know that's a tight end, but it's still the number 1 option. He's by far the best player on the team after DeAndre Hopkins was done there. And he also fed it to DeAndre Hopkins as well. But they used McBride as a wide receiver all the time. I mean, that guy was a large, muscular wide receiver. He was lining up. I was just watching a play the other day because I've been grabbing a bunch because I want to write about them. I want to bring them on the show and talk about Murray. But they line up 3 guys to Murray's right and only Trey McBride to the left. And he's got a favorable matchup there. He wins the matchup. And Murray, if he walked it up to him and handed it to him, would not have been more accurate. I mean, it was just on time, dead in the middle. I mean, this is a very accurate quarterback. And I think that people have maybe like a misconception about Murray, or well, there's like probably about 27 misconceptions about Murray from the last month of talking about this. But one of the things you're going to see is this guy can throw it on a dime to a lot of parts of the field. And for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, there is a scenario where this just works. And it's not the same looking football as Sam Darnold, who has one of the great arms, I think, in the league, but the accuracy, it will actually remind you at times. And I know it's going to sound a little bit silly. People, oh, how could you say this? There are times where he looks like Drew Brees, where it's like this undersized quarterback who's throwing with such great anticipation and accuracy. Now, I'm not saying it looks like if to be Drew Brees, you have to do it every single game and it's got to be super consistent and you've got to be the field general and one of the best leaders. And I'm not saying he's Drew Brees. I'm saying there's a lot of plays that are so accurate. You're just like, whew, man, like that was right on the money. And
TJ Hawkinson should eat.
That's
I feel like
right.
TJ
Absolutely.
Hawkinson
That's
should
what I
just
mean.
feast on this season.
That's what I mean. Like if the play is there and it works and he can throw it in time and he's comfortable with it, it's going to work. And then the other stuff has to also click. And the hard part for me here with Kyler Murray is I know exactly what's going to make or break it. I just don't know which way it's going to go. That's performance under pressure. I've never seen someone's profile like this under pressure. There are seasons where Kyler Murray in his career is a top 5 quarterback under pressure and a bottom 5 quarterback under pressure. I have no idea what he's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen. That's what makes this great. Here's what I'd like from you, Manny, because a bunch of moves have happened and we haven't broken them down ourselves yet. And at some point, this will be a good idea for another show. We'll do it. To have you pick the schedule now with Kyler Murray. That's what we have to do. That's what we have to do soon. I've done like 47 hours of podcasting so far, and it's Friday night. I don't want to keep you forever. So we'll do that soon. We've got time. But here's what I want from you. I want to look at these over-under win totals for some other interesting teams in the NFC, knowing what we know now about free agency, and just tell me what you think. So right now, Chicago on FanDuel is over under 9.5 wins, and it slightly leans toward the under, but let's not worry too much about that. But 9.5 wins for Chicago. They have not been as active as I thought they were going to be.
And they got money to spend, don't they?
Well, I think it's not as much. Well, they made some. Yes. Yeah, they made some. It was going into the offseason. It wasn't as much as you would have thought with the rookie quarterback contract, but they made some by cutting Edmonds and trading DJ Moore because I think they thought they were getting Max Crosby, and now they're not.
Yeah, they haven't really done a lot. And I think Caleb will be better, but they obviously they had a really good season and it was a lot of fun if you're a Bears fan. But they kind of skated by with some wins during last year that you thought, in a lot of other seasons they probably wouldn't have won that game. So I'll say it was at 9.5.
Yeah,
I'll say under, but I don't think it's going to be like drastically under. I would say like 9. It feels like 9 for the Bears.
Good at their jobs, these. Because, I mean, like 10 is probably where I'd have it because I think there's going to be some regression, but I also think Caleb will get better. Right. Thank you, Slim Bo Boogie, for first-time listener. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you dropping by, and thanks for the super chat. It's good to hear. We've had a lot of those over the last few days, people discovering the show, so welcome. Good to have you. We'll continue to be here a lot as we go forward. I would probably go slightly over, but then it's going to be tough because when you get to the other NFC North teams, you might also want to go over, and someone's not going to be, which takes us to the Detroit Lions, whose over-under is 10.5. The betting markets are continuing to buy the Detroit Lions despite what happened last year.
I'll say Lions are tricky too, man, because they went from 15-2 to 9-8 in last place. Technically, last place in the NFC North in 2025.
Last place schedule for the Lions, though.
That is true. And you know what? That's a huge factor. So I'll say, what was it? 10?
10.5. Yeah, 10.5. Yeah.
And you stop babbling so much, so I remember what the number is. I'll say over. I'll say over with Detroit.
I think they could be over as well. And we have to remember as we do all this calculus, and when you eventually do pick the schedule, they are playing the NFC South. Let's just keep that in mind because Atlanta is going to start maybe Tua. Oh, the revenge game. And Tampa Bay's okay. And Carolina, I think, is decent. But this is not the West, right? So this could be another year where all these teams are good. The only thing about Detroit is, looking at the Athletics top 150 free agents, the only ones they've signed are Cade Mays, the center, who's pretty good, and Isaiah Pacheco, who was ranked 147 on their 150 list and is not that great. they really have not added a lot of blue chip talent. And the same thing goes for the Green Bay Packers, who signed Javon Hargrave, and I think that's a good move for them. They are also over under 10.5 wins. How about that for a division that's 10.5, 10.5, 9.5, and 8.5? Competition, man.
Yeah, these teams are gonna beat the hell out of each other.
Yes.
It's gonna be fun though. So Packers, yeah, I with the Packers, the Hargrave move, I agree with you. I think the Hargrave move was good for them. What's Micah gonna look like coming back from that injury? It kind of happened later in the season. Is he gonna be at, how severe was that ACL tear? How long is it gonna, if he's ready at the start of the season, how long is it gonna take him to kind of get his legs back underneath him coming off an injury like that? We saw, Christian Darrisaw kind of struggled to get back to himself in 2025 after suffering the injury in 2024. And Darrisaw had that injury earlier in the season than Micah had his. So I think that's going to be a big factor in how good the Packers are. Just what they're able to get out of, because they lost some other guys. They added Hargrave, but they lost Quay Walker.
Yep.
So
added Zaire Franklin.
Yeah. It was a good.
But he's kind of been just a guy. Like he was early in his career fantastic for Indianapolis at times. Whoa. I mean, he's very durable, but last year, holy cow. I mean, he has one. Usually don't see starters with a 38 PFF grade. So
solid podcast guest.
I've seen that. Yeah. He's a little.
He goes on the Joe Budden podcast a few times.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of entertaining when he's on there. But yeah, I think it's really for the Packers. It's just going to depend on Micah's health and how he's able to kind of come back from that injury. If he comes back looking like his old self, that's going to be a dangerous team. But the tough thing with them is just Jordan Love was really good in 2025, but he can be kind of up and down sometimes, and it just kind of depends on how good he is. So I'll say over, but not much over the 10 or 10.5, whatever it is.
I agree. Manny, is this the fastest you've ever seen free agents come off the board in free agency? Or is it just my imagination because it's like this now? Or am I not crazy for being like, where did they all go? Other than poor Juwan Jennings, who's upstairs in my house. I'm going to try to convince him to come here just so we can have one emergency podcast. Please, Juwan, please. Just
somebody sign my guy, Juwan.
Just someone. It doesn't have to be him. They haven't signed anyone.
Coller, I would be over the moon if the Vikings signed Juwan Jennings. He's
good. He is good. I think he's better than people think.
The MVP of the Super Bowl.
I know.
Against the Chiefs.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's my guy, man.
He's going to go sign with the Titans. Why did everyone sign with the Titans and the Raiders and the Jets? Come on.
I will say this about the Titans. Thank goodness for their new uniform. I kind of like their new uniforms. It's kind of the old Houston Oilers kind of scheme, which I kind of like. I've never really liked the Titans uniforms over the years. So shout out to them at least for doing that. So
Jack's Park makes a fair enough point. They don't have any cap space, and that's why. But what we like here is emergency podcasts. Last year, the highest performing emergency podcast from last year was when they traded like a 5th round pick for Jordan Mason. And that video went crazy. So if it was Juwan Jennings, through the roof. That's what I know. We've got quarterback excitement. That's a lot. But it has been such a quiet free agency period that, they might be waiting on new contracts for like O'Neal or Cashman to create a little bit of extra space there. This also might be your football team. It might be some veteran minimum type of guys at the last minute. We saw them do this in 2021 where they made the Chris Herndon trade. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, except for the Corey Vedvik thing was even worse.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah. That is a thing that happened. And, they brought in guys sort of last minute, and we might see that kind of thing too. And every once in a while, there is somebody who weirdly slips through the cracks and then ends up being a good signing. So we'll kind of see what happens. But did want to let everyone know that for the weekend, that's kind of the plan. Is I'm thinking about trying to put together something. I usually don't do like film studies on the show because we're kind of here to talk together. But something with Kyler's film to take a look at what he brings to the table a little closer. And other than that, emergency pods. If there's almost anything, not anything, but almost anything. I don't think James Pierre rose to the level. I'm sorry. I think he's going to be fine, but like, I don't think that quite rose to the level or losing Ryan Wright, but any significant signing will definitely be here. And there will be more things popping up on the channel. So Manny Hill, great to catch up with you and get all of your takes on Kyler Murray. And we will definitely catch up again very soon to have you pick the schedule with Kyler Murray as the quarterback. Maybe we can do that next week.
Well, if they do sign Juwan Jennings somehow,
then
I'll jump on. I'll jump on for the emergency pod.
You're on the emergency pod
because I'll be over the moon.
Just want to say this has been a super interesting and fun week. Everybody in the comment section has done a great job of being respectful to each other and making the chat and the conversations really, really fun here. So I appreciate all of you guys and all of you new subscribers. Welcome to the show. And we will talk to you all very soon. Football.